Then, when it was the 12th night, she continued, I have heard, O auspicious king, that the dervish said to the lady of the house, to Ja'far and the caliph and the rest of the company that were listening, my uncle struck his son with his shoe, as he lay there, burned black as charcoal. He went on. This astonished me, and I was filled with grief for my cousin and at the fate that had overtaken him and the girl. By God, uncle, I said, remove rancor from your heart. My heart and mind are filled with concern. I am saddened by what has happened to my cousin, and by the fact that he and this girl have been left like charcoal. Is their fate not enough for you that you strike your son with your shoe? He said, Nephew, from his earliest days this son of mine was passionately in love with his sister. I used to keep him away from her, and I would tell myself, they are only children. But when they grew up they committed a foul sin. I heard of this, and although I did not believe it, I seized him and reproached him bitterly, saying, Beware of doing what no one has done before you or will do after you, and which will remain as a source of disgrace and disparagement among the kings until the end of time, as the news is carried by the caravans. Take care not to act like this, or else I shall be angry with you and kill you. I kept him away from her and kept her from him. But the damned girl was deeply in love with him, and Satan got the upper hand and made their actions seem good to them. When my son saw that I was keeping him from his sister, he constructed this underground chamber, set it in order and provisioned it, as you see. Then, taking me unawares when I had gone out hunting, he came here, but the righteous God was jealous of them and consumed them both with fire, while their punishment in the next world will be harsher and stronger. He then wept, and I wept with him, and he looked at me and said, You are my son in his place. I thought for a time about this world and its happenings, and of how my father had been killed by his vizier, who had then taken his place and who had plucked out my eye, and I thought of the strange fate of my cousin. I wept, and my uncle wept with me. Then we climbed back up and replaced the cover and the earth, and restored the tomb as it had been, after which we returned to the palace. Before we had sat down, however, we heard the noise of drums, kettledrums and trumpets, the clatter of lances, the shouting of men, the clink of bridles and the neighing of horses. The sky was darkened by sand and dust kicked up by horses' hooves, and we were bewildered, not knowing what had happened. When we asked, we were told that the vizier who had taken my father's kingdom had fitted out his troops, collected men, hired Bedouin, and come with an army like the sands that could not be numbered and which no one could withstand. They had made a surprise attack on the city, which had proved unable to resist, and which had surrendered to them. After this, my uncle was killed, and I fled to the edge of the city, saying to myself, If I fall into this man's hands, he will kill me. Fresh sorrows were piled on me. I remembered what had happened to my father and to my uncle, and I wondered what to do, for if I showed myself, the townspeople and my father's men would recognize me and I would be killed. The only way of escape that I could find was to shave off my beard and my mustache, which I did, and after that I changed my clothes and went out of the city. I then came here, hoping that someone might take me to the commander of the faithful, the caliph of the Lord of creation, so that I might talk to him and tell him the story of what had happened to me. I got here tonight, and was at a loss to know where to go when I came to where this dervish was standing. I greeted him and told him that I was a stranger, at which he said, I too am a stranger. While we were talking, our third companion here came up to us, greeted us, introducing himself as a stranger, to which we made the same reply. We then walked on as darkness fell and fate led us to you. This is the story of why my beard and mustache have been shaved, and of how I lost my eye. The lady said, Touch your forelock and go. Not before I hear someone else's tale, the man replied. The others wondered at his story, and the caliph said to Ja'far, By God, I have never seen or heard the like of what has happened to this dervish. The second dervish then came forward and kissed the ground. He said, Lady, I was not born one-eyed, and my story is a marvelous one which, were it written with needles on the inner corners of the eyes of men, would serve as a warning to those who take heed. I was a king, the son of a king. I studied the 7 readings of the Quran. I read books and discussed them with men of learning. I studied astronomy, poetry, and all other branches of knowledge until I surpassed all the people of my time, while my calligraphy was unrivaled. My fame spread through all lands and among all kings. So it was that the king of India heard of me, and he sent a messenger to my father, together with gifts and presents suitable for royalty, to ask for me. My father equipped me with 6 ships, and after a full month's voyage we came to land. We unloaded the horses that we had taken on board with us, and we loaded 10 camels with presents. But we had only traveled a short way when suddenly we saw a dust cloud which rose and spread until it filled the sky. After a while, it cleared away to show beneath it 50 mail-clad horsemen like scowling lions, and on closer inspection we could see that they were Bedouin highwaymen. When they saw our small numbers, and that we had 10 camels laden with gifts for the king of India, they rushed at us with leveled lances. We gestured to them with our fingers and said, "We are envoys on our way to the great king of India, so do not harm us." "We don't live in his country," they told us, "and are no subjects of his." Then they killed some of my servants, while the rest took flight. I was badly wounded and I too fled, but the Bedouin did not pursue me, being too busy sorting through the money and the gifts that we had brought with us. Having been cast down from my position of power, I went off with no notion of where I was going, and I carried on until I reached the top of a mountain, where I took refuge in a cave until daybreak. I continued traveling like this until I came to a strong and secure city, from which cold winter had retreated, while spring had come with its roses. Flowers were blooming, there were gushing streams, and the birds were singing. It fitted the description of the poet. A place whose citizens are subject to no fear, and safety is the master there. For its people it is a decorated shield, its wonders being plain to see. As I was tired out with walking and pale with care, I was glad to get there. With my changed circumstances, I had no idea where to go. Passing by a tailor in his shop, I greeted him and he returned my greeting and welcomed me with cheerful friendliness. When he asked me why I had left my own country, I told him what had happened to me from beginning to end. He was sorry for me and said, "Young man, don't tell anyone about yourself, as I am afraid lest the king of this city might do you some harm, as he is one of your father's greatest enemies and has a blood feud with him." He then produced food and drink, and he and I ate together. I chatted with him that night, and he gave me a place to myself at the side of his shop and fetched me what I needed in the way of bedding and blankets. I stayed with him for 3 days, and he then asked, "Do you know any craft by which to make your living?" I told him, "I am a lawyer, a scientist, a scribe, a mathematician, and a calligrapher." "There is no market for that kind of thing here," he replied. "No one in this city has any knowledge of science or of writing, and their only concern is making money." "By God," I said, "I know nothing apart from what I have told you." He said, "Tighten your belt, take an axe and a rope and bring in firewood from the countryside. This will give you a livelihood until God brings you relief, but don't let people know who you are or else you will be killed." He then brought me an axe and a rope and handed me over to some woodcutters, telling them to look after me. I went out with them and collected wood for a whole day, after which I carried back a load on my head and sold it for half a dinar. With part of this I bought food and the rest I saved. I went on like this for a year, and then when the year was up, I came out to the countryside one day, as usual, and as I was wandering there alone I found a tree-filled hollow where there was wood aplenty. Going down into the hollow, I came across a thick tree stump and dug round it, removing the soil. My axe then happened to strike against a copper ring and, on clearing away the earth, I discovered a wooden trapdoor, which I opened. Below it appeared a flight of steps, and when I reached the bottom of these, I saw a door, on entering which I saw a most beautiful palace set with pillars. In it I found a girl like a splendid pearl, one to banish from the heart all trace of care, sorrow and distress, while her words would dispel worries and would leave a man, however intelligent and sensible, robbed of his senses. She was of medium height, with rounded breasts and soft cheeks. She was radiant and beautifully formed, with a face shining in the black night of her hair, while the gleam of her mouth was reflected on her breast. She was as the poet said, dark-haired and slim-waisted. Her buttocks were like sand dunes and her figure like that of a ban tree. There is another verse. There are 4 things never before united except to pierce my heart and shed my blood, a radiant forehead, hair like night, a rosy cheek, and a slim form. When I looked at her, I praised the Creator for the beauty and loveliness that He had produced in her. She looked at me in turn and asked, "What are you, a human or one of the jinn?" "A human," I told her, and she asked, "Who brought you to this place where I have been for 25 years without ever seeing a fellow human?" I found her speech so sweet that it filled my heart, and I said, "It was my lucky stars that brought me here, my lady, to drive away my cares and sorrows." Then I told her from beginning to end what had happened to me, and she found my plight hard to bear and wept. "I, for my part," she said, "will now tell you my own story. You must know that I am the daughter of King Iftimus, Lord of the Ebony Islands. He had given me in marriage to my cousin, but on my wedding night I was snatched away by an Ifrit named Jurgis, son of Rajmus, the son of the maternal aunt of Iblis. He flew off with me and brought me down into this place, where he fetched everything that was needed: clothes, ornaments, fabrics, furniture, food, drink, and everything else. He comes once every 10 days, sleeps here for the night, and then goes on his way, as he took me without the permission of his own people. He has promised me that if I need anything night or day, and if I touch with my hand these 2 lines inscribed on the inside of this dome, before I take my hand away he shall appear before me. Today is the 4th day since he was here, and so there are 6 left until he comes again. Would you like to stay with me for 5 days, and you can then leave one day before he returns?" "Yes," I replied. "How splendid it is when dreams come true." This made her glad, and rising to her feet, she took me by the hand and led me through an arched door to a fine, elegant bath. When I saw this, I took off my clothes and she took off hers. After bathing, she stepped out and sat on a bench with me by her side. Then she poured me out wine flavored with musk and brought food. We ate and talked until she said, "Sleep, rest, for you are tired." Forgetting all my troubles, I thanked her and fell asleep. When I woke, I found her massaging my feet. "God bless you," I said, and we sat there talking for a time. "By God," she said, "I was unhappy, living by myself under the ground, with no one to talk to me for 25 years. Praise be to God, who has sent you to me." Then she asked me whether I would like some wine, and when I said yes, she went to a cupboard and produced old wine in a sealed flask. She then set out some green branches, took the wine and recited, "Had I known you were coming, I would have spread my heart's blood o'er the pupils of my eyes. My cheeks would have been a carpet when we met, so that you could have walked over my eyelids." When she had finished these lines, I thanked her. Love of her had taken possession of my heart, and my cares and sorrows were gone. We sat drinking together until nightfall, and I then passed with her a night the like of which I had never known in my life. When morning came, we were still joining delights to delights, and this went on until midday. I was so drunk that I had lost my senses, and I got up, swaying right and left, and I said, "Get up, my beauty, and I will bring you out from under the earth and free you from this Ifrit." She laughed and said, "Be content with what you have and stay silent. Out of every 10 days he will have 1, and 9 will be for you." But drunkenness had got the better of me, and I said, "I shall now smash the dome with the inscription, 'Let him come, so that I may kill him, for I am accustomed to killing Ifrits.'" On hearing this, she turned pale and exclaimed, "By God, don't do it." Then she recited, "If there is something that will destroy you, protect yourself from it." She added more lines. "You look for separation, but rein in the horse that seeks to head the field. Patience, for times nature is treacherous, and at the end companions part." She finished her poem, but, paying no attention to her words of warning, I aimed a violent kick at the dome. Morning now dawned and Shahrazad broke off from what she had been allowed to say.